And greetings. Happy Wednesday. Welcome to the Steve Deace Show, live and on demand here on BlazeTV, radio and podcast. Steve Deace here with Todders and Aaron McIntyre. And of course, we welcome all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think. Steve@stevedeace.com is the email address. That's DEACE. Like us on Facebook. Follow us on Twitter at Steve Deace Show. You can also check us out on the free speech alternatives to those sites. Look for Steve Deace on Parler, Gab, and MeWe. A few of you have asked me, why don't we promote those sites more? Well, you're actually all to blame for that. Frankly, I mean, we'd love it if we never had to mention the names Facebook and Twitter again. Unfortunately, that's still where most of you, and it's not even close, access our content as opposed to Parler, MeWe, and Gab. So if you guys would like to change that, I'm totally fine never talking about Facebook or Twitter again. But until that changes, we got to move where the food is. But we would invite you to leave Facebook and Twitter behind so that we can. And check us out on MeWe, Gab, and Parler as well. If you like censored clips of the show, and I don't know why you would, but again, I mean, there's more people on YouTube than Rumble, and it's not even close. But so if you like censorship, check us out, youtube.com/Steve Deace. Or if you like to actually get uncensored content, check us out at rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. In fact, I didn't even bother to look yesterday, Aaron. Were we even able to post any of yesterday's show on YouTube? Any of it?
I posted my montage and then Pop Culture Tuesday, and that's it.
All right. Out of a 2-hour program.
Hour and 30 minutes.
Yeah, hour and 30 when you remove the commercial breaks, right? Also, I can't imagine there's anybody left in this audience that hasn't done it yet, looking at the sales numbers, but thank you. You can still get your copy or copies of Fauci and Bargain, the most powerful and dangerous bureaucrat in American history at Amazon.com. It's still the #1 political commentary book in the country. It's still in the top 5 at Barnes and Noble as well. So for those of you that don't want to do business with Amazon, now you don't have to. Get your copy at Barnes and Noble if you prefer. Cannot thank enough. I mean, we are well over 1,000 reviews, overwhelming, like over 90% of them are 5 stars. I mean, the success of the book, really, 2 people deserve more credit than even Todd and I do. One is Anthony Zaccardi, who runs Post Hill Press. The book was his idea. He came to us with the proposal. But then all of you, that have made it such a rousing success. This is your effort is at the very least as important as our own, if not more so. So we cannot thank you enough. And we're just going to keep doing it because you guys keep buying it. So thank you very much. Help us to get the word out about the important information in this book. All right, coming up on the show today, of course, it's a Wednesday. The return of the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation. He was out ill last week. We are anxious to hear from our good friend Daniel Horowitz at the end of today's show. We'll also, of course, have buy, sell, or hold when we will touch on a plethora of diverse topics at your choosing. But before we get to all of that, here is Aaron's rundown of what happened while we were away.
What happened while we were away, brought to you by Today's the Day. Today is the day I've been waiting for ever since we began today in coronavirus history. On this day back in 2020, in the midst of 30 days to slow the spread, Dr. Fauci tells Vanity Fair magazine, quote, "If you're willing to take a risk, and you know everybody has their own tolerance for risks, you could figure out if you want to meet somebody on a hookup app." Yes, this comes around the same time you didn't have the choice to take the risk of buying gardening supplies in Michigan, didn't have the choice to take the risk of going to church in most of the country, and didn't have the choice to take a risk of living your life as normal. But Fauci said hooking up with strangers is fine. Moving on, we got an up-close look at lockdown fetishes from 2 prime ministers over the last 48 hours. Here's Boris Johnson.
But it is very, very important for everybody to understand that the reduction in these numbers, in hospitalizations and in deaths and in infections, has not been achieved by the vaccination program. People don't, I think, appreciate that it's the lockdown that has been overwhelmingly important in delivering this improvement.
And here's Justin Trudeau.
That the UK is ahead of just about everybody else on vaccinations, and yet they maintain very strong restrictions and are facing a very serious third wave. Vaccinations on their own are not enough to keep us safe. We need to engage in the right kinds of behaviors, do things that the Conservatives aren't always good at, like wearing masks, keeping distances, and obeying public health rules.
An update on those pesky PCR tests. A new study published at the Canadian Medical Association Journal found only 19% of positive PCR tests for coronavirus in children under the age of 10 contained what's called replication-capable viral material. In other words, only 1 in 5 PCR positive tests in kids found a virus capable of actually causing an infection. The same study found just 44% of PCR positive tests found a virus capable of causing an infection in adults. What's this mean? The case demic we've been dealing with ever since the beginning of last summer may be overcounting actual infections by around 60%. The country of Denmark is reportedly putting a permanent end to the AstraZeneca COVID vaccine, according to Danish media. The European Union's drug watchdog said last week it had found a possible link between the vaccine and the very rare blood clot cases, but said the risk of dying from COVID-19 was, quote-unquote, much greater than the risk of mortality from rare side effects. The AstraZeneca vaccine is built with the same technology as the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, which, as you know, was suspended by the U.S. FDA yesterday. Donald Trump, via a statement last night, slammed the FDA and the CDC for the decision, calling it a terrible disservice. And now the least surprising news of all time, Project Veritas was able to get an employee of CNN named Charlie Chester, a technical director, on undercover camera, admitting the network made up all last year to get former President Trump ousted from office.
Look what we did. We got Trump out. I am 100% going to say it. And I 100% believe it, that if it wasn't for CNN, I don't know that Trump would have gotten voted out.
Chester also admitted the narrative surrounding Trump's health was completely fabricated.
I don't know, like his hand was shaking or whatever like that. We brought in like so many medical people to like all tell a story that like it was all speculation. That he was like neurological damage, like that he was losing it, he's unfit to, you know, whatever. We were creating a story there that we didn't know anything about, you know.
And that once COVID is over, global warming is going to be CNN's new push.
Our focus was to get Trump out of office, right? Without saying it, that's what it was, right? So our next thing is going to be for climate change awareness.
Do you think it's going to be just like a lot of like fear, like climate?
Yeah, fear sells. Fear sells. No one ever says those things out loud, but it's obvious.
After this all went down, a few days later, James O'Keefe of Project Veritas caught up with Chester to Catch a Predator style.
Charlie, is this seat taken? I'm James O'Keefe with Project Veritas. You're a technical director at CNN. You're on camera talking about the importance of getting Trump out of office without saying that's what your intent is.
I'm not interested in talking to you.
I just want to ask you...
I've asked you now.
What
you're close to you, within 6 feet of me. Without your mask on.
Well, I can stand 6 feet away from you and ask the same questions.
Moving on, Joe Biden says he's going to bring the troops home from Afghanistan. No, really, I mean really this time, guys. The troops are finally coming home for real. Mitch McConnell is positively quivering with rage at the notion.
Precipitously withdrawing U.S. forces from Afghanistan is a grave mistake. It is a retreat in the face of an enemy that has not yet been vanquished, an abdication of American leadership.
The NCAA announced in a statement yesterday that it, quote, unequivocally supports dudes competing in women's sports, and also announced they'll pull championships from states that disagree. Update from Brooklyn Center, Minnesota, where Mayor Mike Elliott says he doesn't understand why cops need to have weapons.
I don't believe that officers need to necessarily have weapons, every time they're making a traffic stop.
And that's what happened while we were away.
Aaron's montage brought to you by Home Title Theft, or Home Title Lock. You know, we've been warning you about home title theft, where cyber thieves remove you from your home's title, and they become the owner. That's why I said, hey, you better get Home Title Lock because it's coming. Well, if you're on Facebook, they just had a big breach there. Facebook had over 500 million accounts exposed to cyber thieves. And according to a retired FBI cyber crime expert, everything thieves need to take over as the new owner of your home was leaked there as well. That's the name, address, personal information, all of it out there. Thieves will forge your signature on a quitclaim deed stating you sold your home to them. And then they leave you in debt because they liquidate all that equity, stick you with everything, maybe even have you evicted. So you need to make sure to protect your home's title with Home Title Lock. Go to HometitleLock.com, register your address to see if you're already a victim, and then sign up for 30 free days of protection during this high-risk breach. Again, this is one of the biggest websites in the world with a massive data breach. So sign up for 30 free days of protection during this high-risk breach right now at HometitleLock.com. Use the code RADIO. The code RADIO at HometitleLock.com. Code RADIO, HometitleLock.com. In the overtime today, I put up a Twitter poll asking you, which of these institutions do you trust the most? Legacy media, government schools, the intelligence community, or the CDC? Which of them do you trust the most? We are going to discuss those results later today and what we think they mean in the overtime. If you want to watch, go to blazetv.com/Deace. That's where you'll get to watch. We will record it for you, our subscribers. We'll record it for you right after today's show, and then we'll upload it so that you can watch it at your convenience later on at blazetv.com/Deace. And that's also where you can go if you're not yet a subscriber and you want to become one and get a discounted subscription at blazetv.com/Deace. All right, let's get to the montage. And by now, you guys know we're for what we're for, no matter who else is for it or against it at a given time. If you're for what we're for, then you have an ally in us. If you're against, and it doesn't matter how many times you were against us before this moment, how many times you are against us on other things at this moment, and then how many times you will be against us on other things in future moments. At this moment, if you're for what we're for, then we're for the same thing. And it works in reverse if you're against what we're against, right? So this week, the Biden administration has made 2 correct decisions. And those wearing our own jersey who are criticizing them for that this week, I vehemently disagree with. That was, number 1, the decision made yesterday, because it is the Biden administration. They're the executive branch. These agencies operate under their supervision. The decision that was made yesterday to suspend the Johnson & Johnson vaccine, that was the right decision. The decision made yesterday, we're pulling all the troops out of Afghanistan by September. That's the right decision. The only wrong part about it is they're not doing it tomorrow. And I don't have any interest to protect in Afghanistan, and neither do any of you. No one in the sound of my voice, no one has any interest to protect in Afghanistan and hasn't had any for many years now. That has been a waste, a travesty, and dumb, exceeded only by Iraq. Moving on. The top 4 items in Aaron's montage today really do lay out for all of us a framework of what a scam this has been for the last year and continues to be. I remember vividly a year ago when Fauci said, sure, hookups on Tinder. By the way, Aaron, you were telling me that's how Project Veritas busted this CNN guy.
Just serendipitous.
Good old-fashioned pillow talk, right?
Yeah.
So they sent the hottie in, all right, and got him talking, basically. Rolling tape, is that what happened? Mm-hmm. Right.
And on behalf of men everywhere to women, I apologize that clown's part of our tribe. You deserve better, ladies.
Yeah. Yes, but it also shows how much power you guys have all been wielding all along. All right. But, the idea, hey, yeah, hookup culture's fine. Rando, sex with strangers, fine. Leaving your home to plant seeds, not so much. Walking into a Walmart or Costco, maybe not. And going to a local drugstore certainly isn't safe, right?
Yes.
Okay. Kids in school, of course, we can't do that. Okay. I mean, that was one of the first, I recall a year ago, one of the first gifts that we had about this entire thing. Before, we just kind of looked at this as a exercise in data and logic, and what does the data say, right? That was really one of the very first, what you talking about, Willis, moments of this entire, and now we get these almost daily now, right? But that was one of the very first ones you're like, okay. Now I see what you're doing. You're peeing on me and telling me it's raining, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the very first ones. So it was good for Aaron to mark, speaking of peeing on me and telling me it's raining, it was good of Aaron to mark his territory there. Which brings us now to truth and lies, the next 3 items. Folks, that study from the Canadian Medical Journal is just a confirmation and further quantifying of the reporting that was done by the New York Times last August about this. That the cycle thresholds, meaning how many times did they run your sample through the PCR process before they determined if it was positive. They have to run it at least into the teens because these are microscopic samples, right? Okay. But for every other outbreak or contagion prior to this, anything above a score of 30 has not been considered, in most cases, has not been considered transmissible or contagious. We're running this thing up to 35 or 40. Or at least we were last August when the New York Times reported about this. This is when my Facebook page, which was soaring, was pinged for the first time and has never fully recovered. I got pinged for sharing the New York Times' own work. I wonder, the New York Times Facebook page, do they get pinged for publishing their own work? I got pinged for sharing their work on this. I mean, I would have no way of checking. In fact, frankly, I didn't know what a viral threshold was prior to this New York Times story last August. I had to research it. I didn't know what it was. They're the ones that did the work on this. And what they showed is that in a lot of states, because it varies state to state, lab to lab, and Florida, I believe, was the first state after this New York Times story that ordered all of its labs to start reporting the cycle viral threshold to the State Board of Health, because we are logging what are called viral artifacts, meaning remnants of a past infection that is no longer transmissible. We are rendering them as positive tests. What this Canadian Medical Journal is just continuing that theme. The 44%? Is that what they estimate of adult tests?
Yes.
Was it 41 or 44?
I believe it was 44.
So almost half. What they're saying is almost half of the tests are rendering a positive for someone who is no longer contagious. If you're not contagious, now you and your doctor still care about your individual health, right? You and your family still do. Over this past year, we've had to learn to separate the healthcare aspect of this from the public policy aspect of this. So you and your own physician, you and your family still may care about why you had a positive test come up and may have to deal with that situation with you on an individual level. But on a corporate level, we don't care. From a societal level, if you're not contagious, we all have our own problems. We all have our own bodies. We have our own health, our own families, our own situations. And yours is yours and mine is mine, and it's nobody else's business unless you can give me your problem. Then it becomes my business, right? If you can give me your problem, it becomes my business. If you can pass on your problem to me, it becomes my business. But if you can't, is it my business?
No.
No. So if we're saying that nearly half of the tests of adults, 44%, are cycle viral thresholds that are no longer transmissible, i.e. contagious, that sort of changes things a bit, does it not?
Well, by extension, what do you think this says about the total death count, Steve?
Well, yes. Yeah. That changes things because remember, we're coding anything with any positive COVID sample, no matter what the comorbidity was, no matter what the act of death was, if you have a positive COVID sample, it has been tagged, coded as death with COVID. Well, I don't know. What's the psychoviral threshold on somebody who died in a motorcycle accident? You know, I don't know. You know? How contagious are you when you're dead? I don't know. I'd like to get answers to questions like that, wouldn't you?
Very much so.
And I think, again, from a public policy standpoint, we are owed those answers. Otherwise, it turns out we're not all in this together, unless this is a gulag. Which brings us to Boris Johnson. I just don't even know. Chud. That's not Boris Johnson. That's a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller, okay? Something has happened to Boris Johnson. That's not him. It's a deep fake. It's not human. They've had multiple waves of lockdowns. Remember that time I interviewed Harley Race, the great professional wrestler? Do you remember that time? When I was still doing sports talk radio, and he was coming to Des Moines to do an event, you know, and he's just burning a lung dart at 7 a.m. right in the middle of the interview. You know, I can hear him doing it. He's like, yeah, we're going to have midgets. Never forget it. You know, and I'm the only 8-time heavyweight wrestling champion ever. And sometimes, you know, I just say stuff and it doesn't have a filter. It just comes out like a reflex.
Sometimes.
And I just instantly retorted, well, doesn't that mean you've then lost it, the championship 8 times too? I heard one more drag and interview ended shortly thereafter. All right. All right. And Boris, how do your lockdowns work if you keep having to do them? Guys, I want you to know, man, I'm on my 4th quadruple bypass, man. I'm Moses Malone right now. Faux. Right? I'm on, dude, my 3rd lobotomy. My 3rd lobotomy, nailed it. Stuck the landing on this one. Worked even better than the 2nd. You can't, I can't debate that. That's not sane. That is insane. It's not logical. It's insane. That's why my answer from now on, chud. That's not Boris Johnson. It is a cannibalistic humanoid underground dweller. The United Kingdom is under the control of a non-Homo sapien as we speak. Denmark. I don't know, maybe Daniel, who will be on with us later. It would be a short list of people who work anywhere in the media in this country who have looked at and studied more COVID-19 data than I have in the last year. It would be a short list. And I'm going to tell you, so many across the world, not just our own, because frankly, our own data has been terrible most of the last year. So I've had to go all over the world. Denmark has been about as transparent and thorough in the data that it shares with the world and its citizens of any country in the world. So with them being, they're the first country that told the truth about masks in a random study. I think they're still the only country in the world that has told the truth about masks in a random study. For them to step forward now and say, we are going to permanently ban the AstraZeneca vaccine. That gets my attention. Now, because they were good civic servants on other matters of COVID in the last year, does that automatically mean they made the right decision here?
No.
I mean, it's not like a perpetual, blessing, right? Bestowment. You earn it case by case. But do you give somebody the benefit of the doubt or not, depending on their recent course of action or their resume or their history?
That's
right?
Adulting, yes.
Yeah. And in this case, I would be inclined, given how thorough and transparent the nation of Denmark has been so far, I would be inclined to give them the benefit of the doubt. Doesn't mean I don't reserve the right to say, all right, they yipped it on the 18th green at Augusta here on this one later. But again, as somebody who has studied as much of this as anybody around the world has in the last year, I mean, Denmark's been about as transparent and thorough as any nation on earth. So for them to be the first ones to come forward and say, I mean, they were the first country in the world that I saw that laid out an age stratification of COVID last year. At least the first one that I was aware of. I didn't know another country did it before Denmark did. And here's the issue. Once you do that, it shows that unless you have a couple of comorbidities or a certain age group, you are not really lethally vulnerable to this virus. And so that's why governments have been hesitant to lay these out. Because once people start seeing the age stratified data, they're like, why then I'm a 30-year-old with the mechanic? Why am I at home and not making a living, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Gets in the way of the Great Reset. Did I say that out loud? Whoops.
Yes, you did. And Denmark was, at least according to my memory, was the first age stratified COVID-19 disclosure I saw any country make a year ago. So, I mean, if they're the first ones to come forward and say, we're never bringing that one back, that gets my attention. You guys have any thoughts on any of these points here in the next few minutes?
The glaring contrast within the last 48 hours of, again, as you said, we've known the data and who this hits for a long time, but constantly abundance of caution, shut it down again, affecting the lives of those we know by the data are almost certainly not going to be impacted by this thing. And then with a particular demographic, we know these vaccines are hurting, apparently women with blood clots, and the blasé nature with the same people that would say, shut down the economy for the fourth time are saying, yeah, that's just really rare. And, sometimes things happen. It's appalling. You people are sick.
There's another, I want to go back to the PCR thing. You are right. We need answers to the question. The question that we need the answer to is this. Who decided what the cycle threshold would be for PCR COVID tests? Who decided that, and when did they decide that, and why? Also, another question we need to get the answer to, I'm going to let this linger, were any changes made to any other tests, like flu tests that we do on a regular basis, that also, by the way, use the PCR testing method, at least for a lot of intra-hospital lab work? Were any changes made to those as well? Those are two questions I think we need the answers to.
Those are good points. Your point, too, that you just made about the difference here in threat assessments. So we had to shut the country down for something that less than 2% of the country is threatened by. But if it's only 1% or less of people that have side effects from a vaccine for a virus that less than 2% of the country is threatened by, then it's just criminal to study it further and not just keep injecting people with it.
Yes.
I mean, if I'm living in Canada, why would you get this vaccine based on what Trudeau just said? I mean, does he get banned by big tech? Isn't that vaccine? Isn't denying the efficacy and safety of the vaccines? I mean, why would you get a vaccine? This is an amazing sales pitch. Multiple countries are doing this. Take an experimental substance and still not get your life back. I mean, I can't believe people aren't just running to get jabbed.
It's the Faucian bargain.
Buy, sell, or hold is next. You know, you got a million reasons these days to be stressed out. Well, male pattern baldness, receding hairlines no longer have to be one of them, because the good news is that Keeps can help you keep your hair with the same doctor-recommended FDA-approved hair loss treatment that everybody else offers. But Keeps offers the generic version, so you're only going to pay about half the cost everybody else offers or demands. And another great part of the deal is the convenience. It's all done online. You just answer a few questions, snap a few pics of your hair, and a licensed doctor will review your info and recommend the right hair loss treatment for you, and it's shipped directly to your door. So why deal with the hassle? Do I have to wear a mask or not? No, don't worry about it. Just do this online, and then also get big savings, and then more big savings with your first order. Half off your first order when you go to get you started. Half off your first order when you go to keeps.com/grow, KEEPS for keeps.com/grow. All right, really quick, before we get to buy, sell, or hold, I'm getting a litany of notes from people who believe that this has nothing to do with the suspensions of the Johnson & Johnson vaccine and previously the AstraZeneca vaccine has little to do with their efficacy or safety, but that this is really about canceling out the two vaccines offered out there that were not using the new experimental mRNA technology, and that this is really Pfizer and Moderna pushing them out of the market. You guys think there's anything to that at all?
Well, I texted you yesterday. What was in reaction to this news? I texted you and Todd, and I said, I'm really conflicted because there's a number of ways that this could be nefarious. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know which one to choose. So it could be a number of things. I think applying Occam's razor when there are a variety of options, usually the one that requires the simplest leap or the least number of leaps is usually the correct answer. I think it's that there's more than the 6 cases that they talked about. I think that's borne out with the same technology used in the AstraZeneca vaccine in Europe. I think that's probably the most likely one, but I'm not going to rule it out, especially not after this last year.
What do you think?
Well, I still have the same issue we brought up yesterday. You aren't just... It's not just a business model. It's not just a spreadsheet. It's not just one vaccine thing. It's the entire vaccine paradigm, which involves a lot of magical thinking about the power of medicine overall in your life. There's a religious sensibility, and if they gain market share temporarily, long term, they still have the issue of creating distrust in vaccines generally. It's a very risky gambit. Agreed. If that's what they were doing.
I agree. First of all, let me say this to those of you in our audience proposing this. You're thinking.
Yeah, sure.
You're thinking the right way. You're critically thinking through this. You've been paying attention, particularly in the last couple of years, and specifically within the last year. So that level of attempted discernment, we won't call it discernment because we don't know that we're actually discerning the truth, right? But so let's not go that far. But and plus, that's really arrogant just to assume every time you try, you're right. But attempted discernment is what is going to be needed for the days we are in and the ones which still lie ahead. So mad props to all of you who are at least trying to think along those lines. That's smart. But I would probably come down where you came down, which is even if they're attempting to do it, it is a risky gambit, as you put it, because a pin was popped. A pin was put in a balloon yesterday.
And most people don't see the distinction between mRNA and the different companies.
That's exactly
Some do, but most don't.
Yeah. And so if you're doing that, if that's their play, that can have, the dropped an atom bomb on your neighbor residual, where the wind changes direction and the fallout ends up in your yard.
Right.
Because now suddenly it's safe to look at everything now.
Yep.
And because I'm getting a lot of people that are also pointing out, hey, look at the amount of incidents that are that are on the VAERS site with Moderna and Pfizer. Right? See, everything's fair game now. But that's why there was so much anger, right, from people pushing the vaccination effort. And again, let me reiterate, there is positive vaccination data out there. In fact, Florida yesterday reported single digits in deaths for the first time since September. Okay? So, I mean, it's not like there's no evidence anywhere that these work. That's not true. The question that's being debated, that's why we're not really debating the efficacy of the vaccines yet, in in a vacuum. We're debating the risk to the grief to profit, the risk to reward ratio. Is what could come back at me from a side effect worth taking the injection? That's the to us, at least to me, and it's my show. That's the equation on the table. Now, if the data showed, Florida did the most aggressive vaccination effort and their hospitalizations for the elderly didn't go down 20%, but went up or stayed the same or went down 3 or 4%, right? And then we'd be like, well, dude, that math don't work. That dog don't hunt. What was the point of all of this, especially now with the stuff that we're seeing? But that's the debate here, because if you're getting these vaccines, you are the human trial now, the real one. The real human trials are going on in real time right now. And so that's why we're looking at both of these criteria and weighing them together. But you guys that's the kind of mental math you need to be doing in the times in which we're in. All right. Reagan used to say, trust but verify. Don't trust anything before it's verified. That's what I would say. All right. And then triple verify it. Okay. And then ask a critical question and run it in reverse back just to make sure that it was even verified, even unto itself. All right. I just had, by the way, I'm so glad when these were last out, I got several boxes this time. I just had the chocolate chip cookie dough Built Bar. I know I've got a few emails from folks. I'm like, man, I wish they'd bring those back out. I'm sure that they will here soon, because they are phenomenal. Now, they've got other flavors out. I mean, I've got another bar sitting over there. Carrot cake with walnuts. That one is phenomenal too. They're all phenomenal. All covered in real chocolate. Every amazing flavor. You've just never had a protein bar like this. I mean, it has the texture, taste, flavor of a candy bar, but when you look at the nutrition, I mean, it's a protein bar, folks. So up to 18 to 20 grams of protein per bar, 5 grams of sugar or less, 5 net carbs or less per bar, 180 calories or less per bar. You don't have to sacrifice taste and nutrition and health any longer. And because of those metrics there, the sugar content, the calorie content, the carb content, any healthy lifestyle that you want to live, Built Bar fits in. It will satisfy. If you're like me, that's my weakness, is the sweet tooth, right? I'm very disciplined in terms of working out. I eat, pretty much the same foods over and over and over again. My weakness is the sweet tooth. That's why I thank heaven for Built Bar. All right. BuiltBar.com is where you can go if you want to give it a shot. 15% off of your first order right now at BuiltBar.com, BUILT. Use the promo code DACE to get that discount. Promo code DACE at BuiltBar.com. Let's get to buy, sell, or hold. One of the most fun times we have every week. Our producer, Aaron, with a little help from his friends in the audience, is going to hammer and ambush you and I, Todd, with a series of predictions, topics, suggestions, etc., lists, who knows what, on various topics. You and I will decide, are we buying that? Are we selling that? Once per episode, you are permitted a hold. But if it's for any reason other than, wow, that's lame, you have to go and listen to Mitch McConnell give a speech about why we have to be in Afghanistan for EVs. Y'all, that's your penalty this week if you use a hold. Fair?
Fair.
All right, Aaron.
We'll start with Jim Eagle, who says revival, if it comes, and I pray it does, will happen in spite of the, what he calls, quote unquote, formal church, and not because of it. Individual Christians will lead the way.
Well, I mean, if you look at historically, has that not been the case? The prophets were sent to the people. Obviously Christ was outside of the formal religious structure. The apostles were essentially creating a new religious structure. The pilgrims left the old religious structure of the Church of England. I actually think more times than not, that's how when you look at biblical history, in more times than not, that's how it's actually occurred. I don't know that it's a perfect record, but more times than not, it has occurred that way. So I would say, given that historical record, I would say buy.
I don't take issue with the fact. I think the prophets are a really good example, but prophets are a formal tool of God as well. They're not an accident. I am going to sell on this one. I think there's a formalizing coming along the lines of what the prison ministry. He started between Catholics and Protestants as well.
You're talking about prison fellowship.
But he also was part of the Catholic Protestant Alliance. What was that called?
I don't remember.
Yeah, neither do I.
Catholics and evangelicals together.
Yeah,
is
something
that what it
like
was
that.
Within
But
Richard John Newhouse.
I think there's going to be a formalizing along those lines, a sort of elves and dwarves and man coming together. I don't think it can happen without the formal structures of orthodoxy coming together.
I would agree, of course, that the prophets and the situations I cited were of God. That's why they were revivalists. Mm-hmm. But I would argue they were not ordained by the system. And I think that's maybe what the question is asking. And that's why I agree with that. Last night, guys, I watched...
it depends from prophet to prophet. I mean, Nathan was ordained to lead David. Others were less so.
Yes, yeah. But I think more often than not, they came from outside of the formal system. I mean, what was Christ's own lament? Jerusalem, Jerusalem, ye who stones the prophets and kills those whom God has sent. How I've longed to gather you in as a hen does her chicks, right? Mm-hmm. Last night I watched the Rise of Jordan Peterson documentary on Amazon Prime. And what blew me away is these young men, he's not a political commentator. He's not a societal commentator. He's a dad. And frankly, a pastor. Without any Bible verses, just men that need guidance, that are not being taught how to grow up, what their potential is, what the expectations are. And to see these strapping young men just wait in line afterwards and they just are broken. That somebody stepped up to them man to man, eyeball to eyeball and said, number one, you got to do better than this. Number two, though, you can do better than this. And here's how. And I think in a secular sense, that's an example of what we're talking about. And why were so many young men before he got sick and had to kind of leave the stage for a while? Why were so many young men lining up all over this continent to be mentored by Jordan Peterson and saying things to him that you would say to a pastor or a priest? Well, probably because their pastors and priests weren't doing those things. So they moved where the food was. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Fascinating answers. Up next, Space Monkey says, ironclad argument. If gender is a social construct, transgenderism is a social construct.
Beautiful. Yes. It's the old, it's the old, how can everything be relative? If everything's relative, then nothing is, because that in and of itself is a self-refuting statement, right? Okay? There's no such thing as absolute truth. Well, you just asserted an absolute, correct? And I think Space Monkey has caught a fly in the ointment, and I would buy wholeheartedly. Well done.
Bye.
Next up, John says the United States military will require that military personnel receive the COVID vaccine.
The only shock is that this hasn't happened 10 minutes ago. Military's gone, guys. Those aren't your troops. That's not your flag. It's not your traditions anymore. It's gone. Now, decide for yourself whether you still think there's enough national interest and patriotic interest to serve there. But the automatic default deference to the military as an institution is, unfortunately, and it breaks my heart to say this, it's gone. All right. So those are the troops of Wokistan now, not these United States of America. So my only shock is that it hasn't happened already. So buy. Of course that's going to occur.
Yeah, I of course buy. And you know what I think about vaccines, but all of the social justice, gender bending is of far, far greater concern about the health of our military than the vaccine. Listen, the irony of joining the military to defend the freedoms of Americans is that you do by definition forego some of your own freedoms and always have. Yeah. And in terms of listen, I wouldn't, if I went into the military thinking what I think about vaccines, I'd have to fully be prepared that I'm getting almost all of them, almost certainly, because that, where you're being sent, the nature of the beast of how you're communing, how you're living with people, it's just that's always been a different animal. So this is coming and it's frustrating, but this has always been part of the bargain of being in the military.
Alexander Rogers has a Mount Rushmore for us. Mount Rushmore of disappointing state citizenry since 2020. Number 4, Kentuckians. Bevan, I hardly knew him.
Yeah, and of course they ended up with a complete and total COVID thug. Yeah, I'll buy.
Since what year?
2020.
Oh, okay, bye.
Number 3, Buckeyes conquered by beta male DeWine.
Yeah, I got to buy on that. Now, I'll say this, though. I say this today and I'm wearing my Michigan pullover. The amount of Ohio and Ohio State fans, VIPs, like famous former players, they're contacting me and sharing our stuff. Okay, there is a level of vitriol and anger organizing and is palpable there and pushing back. The legislature has pushed back there. So there has been better resistance to DeWine in Ohio than there has been to Abbott in Texas. So I guess I'm okay with Ohio being on the list, but there's some real pushback there.
I'll buy because I'm not satisfied with anything short of demanding a recall. So,
well, okay, if that's your standard, I won't argue.
Number 2, New Yorkers. New York tough is an absolute joke.
Yeah, Todd's nailed that in the past. Absolute buy.
And number 1, Texans. Thank you, Abbott. May we have another?
I mean, yes. Yep. I don't have if I have a relocation mistress now, it may be Tennessee. Might be Tennessee. Could be it. I don't know. But I don't know that I have one any longer. I don't. I've only got eyes for Iowa right now, because we're also out of the damn winter. That helps. We'll come back with hour 2 in a moment. And greetings. Welcome back to the Steve Deace Show, hour number 2. Steve Deace here with Todd Erzin, Aaron McIntyre, and all of you. Let us know what you think about what we think via the stevedeace.com inbox. You can do so. Email the program, steve@stevedeace.com, or look for Steve Deace on Facebook, MeWe, Parler, Gab. Follow me at Steve Deace Show on Twitter. And if you're looking for censored content, go to youtube.com/Steve Deace. And if you like the uncensored variety, go to rumble.com/Steve Deace Show. And if you are a podcast listener, thank you so much. Our podcast audience has exploded. I was talking to one of the mucky mucks here at the Blaze yesterday, and we were looking at some of our latest metrics and numbers, and some of the names that right now our podcast is outperforming are some pretty big names. So bigger names than we bring to the table. And so we just have all of you to thank for that. So while you're there, though, hit that subscribe button. Doesn't matter which podcast platform you utilize, but especially if it's iTunes, because that's the biggest one of them all, but that works for any of them. Hit the subscribe button for us. Leave us a 5-star review, because the more of those we get, the more it encourages the algorithms out there to find more people like you. And it also pleases the mucky mucks down in Dallas. They like to see those things too. They apparently think somebody at least needs to like us. Right? We got to have some fans, some supporters. All right, at the bottom of the hour, our good friend, the weekly prophet of woe and lamentation, Daniel Horowitz, will be joining us. Part 2, though, of Buy, Sell, or Hold is brought to you by the Torch of Freedom Foundation. You know, in the chaos of 2021, every law-abiding citizen needs to know how to defend your family before, during, and after a self-defense incident takes place. Patriot Academy's Constitutional Defense Course, which is hosted at the Front Sight Firearms Training Institute out there in Nevada, offers a unique combination of intellectual and physical training that you just can't find anywhere else. This is the course that you've heard our very own Daniel Horowitz talk about on his podcast. He's completed a course a few times now, He's also encouraging patriots everywhere to partake in 16 hours of firearm training on the range and 8 hours of intellectual training in the classroom. Front Sight Firearms Training Institute is the premier firearms and self-defense training organization in the country. They train approximately 50,000 people each year at their 550-acre complex that's just outside of Vegas. It's remarkable, and the training is second to none. If you're one of those people extremely hungry for training right now because of the riots, general unrest, and everything else currently happening in our world, you're going to be amazed at how much you're going to learn, not just about firearms, but about the Constitution and your liberty as well. So this course is for everyone, whether you have never held a weapon before or you have all the experience. It's a family-friendly program too. Front Sight, it's a wonderful thing. You can take the whole family to. You can visit constitutioncoach.com. That's the website, constitutioncoach.com, to register for their May 30th or June 6th course today. And you're going to get, you ready for this? 90% off the training. Now, that doesn't count travel and accommodations. They're not a part of the discount. That's your responsibility. But the training itself, 90, folks. That's practically giving it away. 90% off when you go to constitutioncoach.com today. Again, that's constitutioncoach.com today. All right, let's get back to part 2 of Buy, Sell, or Hold. Aaron.
We'll go now to Hunter Lucas, who says the other vaccines will be downplayed more and more by both sides so they can pin it on Trump, basically ruining any chance he runs in 2024.
Sell. They've already defeated Trump. They've already marginalized him. He's not on any social media platform that matters, really, to the majority of Americans. There are some that do matter that he could be on, like Gab. He's choosing not to be on any of them. So either he has chosen not to engage or has been banned. I think a lot of the country has moved on. I know I've said this before too. For 8 years, it seemed like Barack Obama was the sun and the moon and the stars. And then when he left office, the world moves on. On a lesser scale, last week, I had the #1 book in the country. This week, I might get hit by a car, and no one will care that last week I had the #1 book in the country, and someone else will have the #1 book in the country instead. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. The moment's moved on. That doesn't mean that he is irrelevant, because he's not. He still holds a lot of power, but he's not a prime directive any longer. And the larger paradigm around public health, vaccination, now that Orange Man Bad is gone, that matters to the people in charge now a lot more than dinging Donald Trump one more time. So, sell.
Yeah, I'm selling. And to the degree they are being downplayed in any way, shape, or form right now has nothing to do with an ultimate belief in vaccines. I mean, that magical thinking isn't going anywhere. But the other tools, still masks, still lockdowns, this has to do with something that goes way beyond Trump and what ultimately COVID has been used to do all along. And it's what progressivism has been designed to do all along. And that's take everything and ultimately be the God killer, to be the God.
Moving on, Tiny Johnny says the condition of COVID panic is when you are so scared, you scare yourself and others into a state of panic where you are scared of not being scared.
I like this too.
I very much like that.
I think that's very well said. You've illustrated better than me a point we've made on our show previously, which is the human instinct in the past was, when there's a disaster or a plague, to, go last days of Pompeii. All right, one more orgy, man. Let's squeeze it in. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. We're the first era I know of in all of human history that demanded this thing be worse than it actually was.
Yes.
And how dare you tell me it's not and take that away from me? How dare you free me from this?
This has been deeply fulfilling to a lot of people. That's deeply fulfilling.
Yes.
All that meaningless that the emptiness of progressivism had brought them, even though they'd say that, they were just deeply depressed. This fear, this constant heightened militant vigilance has been, as Jordan Schachtel says, the most important time of their entire lives.
And hey, of course, there's a carpetbagger aspect to this, and there are carpetbaggers and grifters whenever there is calamity, right? And so that you get your Eric Feigl dings. There's always an Eric Feigl ding in every one of these situations, but they need an audience, don't they?
Yes.
They cannot grift on their own. They cannot carpet bag themselves, and so therefore you get this because of what you just said. People are ripe. They're groomed. They want to be ruled, and this is the first plague I know of in human history, where the people demanded that it be told to them it is worse than it actually is.
This relates back to what you said about Jordan Peterson, I believe, last segment or the segment before as well. You wonder why all those young men see him as a pastor, a messianic, or not a messianic figure, that's overstating it, or pastoral or father figure. It's because of the emptiness that Todd has been talking about. Wait, I don't have to be empty. I don't have to live in fear all the time. That's why... that there's a design for how I'm supposed to be. That's why that's the case. 79 model Chris says, Mount Rushmore of greatest living actors to not even get an Oscar nomination: John Goodman, Kurt Russell, Richard Gere, Harrison Ford.
Harrison Ford's not had a nomination?
I
got to look that up.
I don't think so.
Like for Witness or Nothing. Whoa, is that my mic? Sorry about that, Aaron. I got to look that up.
Kurt Russell that's a crime. That guy is such a fantastic actor. He does drama. He does comedy. His range, that's a crime. Richard Gere.
He is an Academy Award nominee.
Yeah, 1986.
Yeah.
Harrison Ford is?
Yeah, I thought that he had been.
What was it for?
I thought it was
Witness.
It was for Witness, the very movie I cited. Yeah.
I can kick Gere off that list.
Yeah, I got to kick a Gere off that list too.
I have no John Goodman again.
Ford doesn't belong on the list because he's been nominated. Goodman is an interesting choice because I think there is a wide range of talent there and ability. Okay, so and it's kind of an inspired, original take to put him on that list. So I like it. Who else am I missing? Who is the fourth?
Kurt Russell.
I'm with you on Kurt Russell. Yeah. In terms of, then who should replace Richard Gere and Harrison Ford, that would take way too much work for us to go through the list of nominees, and we're just not in the mood to do that right now. But is 2 out of 4 good enough to get a bye?
No.
Then so.
Up next, Jason says Alex Jones was actually right about a lot.
Sell. I'm going to sell.
We'll leave it there.
I'm fine with him saying he's right about some.
But how about Alex Jones was right about more than you would have given him credit for this time.
I think that might even be fair too. But here's my thing too, because my worldview doesn't judge people by outcomes. That's utilitarian ethics. My worldview is more, the biblical worldview judges you by your motivations. Choose this day whom you will serve. And they will come to me and say, I did this in your name, and I committed this great act of charity and cast out these demons. And I will say, I don't know who you are. Depart from me into the lake of fire with you. All right. Motivations is the biblical standard for judgment. That's why the first 2 commandments are, I am God. Number 1. Number 2, don't make any other gods. Okay? Those get to acts. Those are the motivations. Whom am I serving? Hey, Baal said not to steal too, and I didn't steal from anybody. So I get in, right? No. Because Baal isn't God and might even be a demon. So no. So motivations are the key. I mean, I don't know. I've never watched his show in mass, so I don't know anything about him beyond just what social media viral clips. How much homework does he do? How many situations did he document? You know what I'm saying? Was he just railing against a system? And if you do it enough times and count on human nature to betray you enough times, you're going to be right more times than not. I don't know the answers to those questions. So motivations in my worldview are what matter more than results. Because we're not utilitarians. I mean, that's one of the impetuses of locking you down. Well, it doesn't matter if it violates your freedom and stuff, what our motivations are. If it works, if it stops the spread of the virus temporarily, it's okay, right? We got the right result, right? So it's not about, lefties like to be judged by intentions. It's okay that I bankrupted you and crashed your currency because I was my intention was to feed as many homeless people as possible, right? Mm-hmm. But a lot of righties want to be judged by results. Well, I made the trains run on time. I got the job done. On your anniversary, go home to your wife with some flowers. Walk into the kitchen on the table, just chuck them on the table. Happy anniversary. Go sit over near your lazy boy, Al Bundy style, with your hand halfway down your pants and grab the remote. She feeling like it's really a happy anniversary, Todd? What do you think?
Yeah.
I mean, you did the thing, right? I did the bottom line result, right?
Right.
That's why you know a tree by its fruit, because a good tree can't produce bad fruit and a bad tree can't produce good fruit, right? Motivations are what ultimately lead to the outcomes we want. Not the outcomes themselves are not what we are judged by. And so to me, I'm not really so much concerned if Alex Jones was right about more than I thought or right about more than he's been given credit for. I'm more concerned about the fact that a couple of years ago when his ex-wife came at him for custody, he put in a court filing not to take my kids away because everybody knows I just say and do these things kind of as an act for effect. It's not to be taken literal, not to be taken seriously. I'm more concerned about that. What's your motivations?
Up next, we have Daniel Clark, who says the view of masculinity in most American churches is a castrated version of biblical masculinity.
Absolutely.
Bye.
Absolutely bye. And
this is the David French principle.
Yeah, there's I've seen it in churches I've belonged to. I've seen it with churches I've observed or pastors I know. Not huge fans in too many cases of men's ministries. Why? Because we're not getting together. Maybe we'll do it once, man. But we're not getting together the third Saturday of every month just to talk. You know what I'm saying? That ain't how we roll. All right? Maybe once I've got some feelings to share. The rest of the time, what the hell am I doing here? There's a ball game I could watch, some golf I could be playing, a car I could be fixing up, a lawn I could be mowing. You know what I'm saying? What am I doing here? What's the point of this? Is it going anywhere? Get the men organized and mobilized, and the men are going to be like, we don't want to just sit here and perpetually share. We don't want to sit here and perpetually talk. So we want to do something. Then you start asking questions like, well, why aren't we doing so-and-so, Pastor? Well, don't be doing that. We're just counting widgets here through the turnstiles. So yeah, bye. Absolutely, bye.
Hard bye.
Next up, actively anti-fascist says the Padres will break the National League record for most wins by a wild card team. 2015 Pirates were 98-64.
So we've had 100-win teams not make the playoffs, but it was the pre-wild card era. I go back to the Giants and Braves, I think it was, on the last day of the season, and didn't the Giants win like 100 games and not make the playoffs one year. One of the more famous cases, the 1980 Baltimore Orioles with Jim Palmer and Steve Stone on the staff and Eddie Murray still in his prime. They won 100 games, I believe, and didn't make the playoffs. Okay. So there have been I can't believe I just kind of pulled that out. Although if you ask me who won the National League West in 2014, I would not remember. No. How weird is that? Is that what happens when you get older? Oh, I remember what happened in the 80s and 90s vividly, and I struggle to remember, dude, who won the NBA title in 2017?
Every year.
Right.
Every year, no matter the sport, I can't automatically recall half the time, like, who won last year's Super Bowl? I'm like, give me a second. Really, I can't just, it won't just come to me.
Like from literally from when Magic and Bird entered the NBA.
Yeah, I know.
Until when my Pistons, their last run with the Chauncey Billups teams ended. I could tell you who was in every NBA Finals and who won every one of those years.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can remember who was in the 2017 NBA Finals.
Right.
You know?
I know.
So that it gets kind of weird like that.
It does.
All right. But will they set the record? Will they win more than 98 games? The odds of that are so low compared to the odds that they won't. So I will sell just because of the value of the odds.
Sell, don't care. Baseball's dead to me right now.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's a little...
It is. I told you.
That's a statement, man. That is a statement.
Professional baseball.
We hear you. We know what you meant.
Yeah.
We're talking to MLB.
Yes.
Dude, this is where LBJ says, if I've lost Walter Cronkite, man.
I know.
If you've lost Todd Erzin, yikes. Okay.
That's not a good thing.
No.
The Psycho Scooter says, 1 or more of these things will happen prior to 2024. 11 or more Supreme Court justices.
Sell, no shot. No, never happening.
Todd?
Just has to be 1 or more of these, don't we? So don't we have to go through the list?
Yep.
Oh, I thought we were going one by one. My bad. Okay.
But you can, let's do them one by one. So
Okay.
Todd, you're selling on that one?
No shot. Never happening. I wished it would. It'd be so beneficial to us if they did and just completely discredited the whole judiciary and the process. We could not be that lucky. We could not be fortunate enough to have our opponents make such a blunder that actually feeds our premise. That would be signs that maybe there's life in the old lady yet. So sell.
I'll buy.
Let's see. Number 2, Ukraine falls to Russia.
Sell.
First of all, does it have to? I mean, if you're Putin, do you have to take on the scrutiny and the, you know what I'm saying?
Yeah, no, I agree.
If you can just essentially influence it as a de facto satellite state to some extent.
Right. Sell.
I mean, why take on the added scrutiny and responsibility and blowback?
Number 3, Taiwan falls to China.
Buy.
I could buy that one. That's the best one I think so far. Yeah.
And number 4, mass casualty event with a nuclear device.
Sell.
I mean, I could buy that happening, especially if we're going to do direct negotiations with Iran. We're going to elevate their standing, not within the world, but within the terrorist community. That's a huge win for Iran. They're the Islamic ghetto right now, guys. I mean, they are the redheaded stepchildren right now of the Islamic world. I mean, you've got the rest of the Islamic world, by and large, coming to Israel with, hey, let's make wampum together. Iran, the specter of Iran. Iran is more castrated than men are in most American Christian churches. Iran is a redheaded stepchild. We're now talking about, though, treating them like an equal. Or at least that's how they will sell it to their peers within Islamic radical circles. That they're back in business, man. Meat's back on the menu. We're back to being the main haven for our belief system. And if that were to happen, then I could see something radioactive gets into the wrong hands of some terrorist group with some Iranian ties, and off we go. I could definitely see that happening. So I will buy, sadly.
So.
All right. Up next, Paul Howard says Asa Hutchinson will run for POTUS in 2024 in the Big Tent cultural gut-rot wing of the GOP, basically Kasich without the mailman dad.
And I'm buying because I only got halfway.
That's the only thing that can happen.
Well, I got halfway through and I was thinking he's John Kasich, and then you mentioned it. Yeah. So since we were vibing there, I'm buying.
Sell.
Let's see. Andy Smith says Todd's better with a beard.
I don't really care.
Is that a buy or a sell?
You know what? I'm holding. Good. Yeah, I don't really care.
I'm sell. Only matters what my wife thinks, and she's good either way.
That's a good answer.
Up next, Dale Doback says Fauci will quote unquote retire in the next 3 months.
I'm already on record saying I don't believe. I said this like more than a month ago. I don't think he finishes the year. 3 months. I could see, what is it now, mid-April? So we're talking mid-July? I could see it, so I'll buy. It wouldn't be my prediction, but I don't think it's not feasible either.
I'll buy.
And Bear NJ says, Todd co-writing a best-selling book on a first attempt is the publishing equivalent to Orson Welles co-writing his great film Citizen Kane to start his career.
I believe I have to buy this, don't I? Rosebud. Yes, buy.
That's very nice of you. Sure, bye.
Except for you, it's going to be Faucian. Faucian.
All right, top 25 one-hit wonders of the 1980s.
All right, here we go. I'm ready for this one now.
Buy if you agree where it is on the list. Sell if you don't. Hold your... Don't hold. Number 25, Musical Youth, Pass the Duchy.
I don't even know what that is. But maybe that's why it's a one-hit wonder. Okay, bye.
Sell.
Do you know what it is?
No, which is why I'm selling.
Okay.
Because if I don't know what it is, it ain't worthy of knowing. Sell.
24, Eddie Brickell and New Bohemians.
Edie Brickell.
Edie Brickell. I'm sorry, I was born in 1993.
That's okay.
Eddie Brickell.
What
Eddie
I
Brickell.
Am.
I like Eddie Brickell better because I friggin' hated this song. All right. But you know what? At least it's something I know, so I'll buy, I guess. But man, I hated this song with a passion. But it's Edie Brickell.
Yeah.
Number 23, Eddie Grant, Electric Avenue.
No way that's 23, man. That was a top 2 song. Sell. It's got to be a lot higher than 23. That's one of the biggest selling one-hit wonder songs of the decade.
You haven't heard the list yet.
Okay. There's not 23 songs better than that. All right, so that's fine. That's the benchmark.
See, you're saying this is why you get so frustrated.
Because they're always wrong.
You just...
Number 22, Michael Cimbello, Maniac.
Maniac. Yeah, that went number 1. I could see it being better than bigger than Electric Avenue. So
She's a Maniac.
Yes.
Okay, bye.
That was a big time number 1 song. I'll buy that. Yeah.
Number 21, Twisted Sister, We're Not Going to Take It.
Now, that's not nearly the hit the previous ones were, but I like that song better than the previous song, so I'm going to buy.
But they're not a one-hit wonder.
No, they're not even a one-hit wonder.
So I got to
You ever heard the song, I Wanna Rock, Rock?
Yeah.
You ever heard that song? That's Twisted Sister, too. Yeah, so you know what? They're not a one-hit wonder. I'm selling with you on that. You're right, yeah.
Number 20, Rockwell, Somebody's Watching Me.
That's a classic one-hit wonder. Michael Jackson on the back, on the backup vocals. I mean, that was a number 1 song too. I kind of think it should be higher, but I'll buy.
Number 19, Dead or Alive, You Spin Me Round Like a Record.
Sell. No way that should be higher. First of all, they weren't a one-hit wonder. They had several hits. Number 1. Secondly, though, that shouldn't be higher than Rockwell. No way. No way is that higher than Rockwell.
Yeah,
that was a much bigger song.
Sell. It makes me sick that that's a hit on any level. Yeah.
18, Rob Bass and DJ Easy Rock, It Takes Two.
It takes two to make a thing go right.
Bye.
It takes two to make it out of sight. I'm going to buy. I got to wonder what's better. How many songs are better than that one, though? That is a definite buy. Yes.
You're going to love the next 2 and possibly 3. Number 17, Men Without Hats, The Safety Dance.
That's a classic 80s one-hit wonder. I wouldn't put it ahead of Rob Bass. I didn't say that, but it's a classic 80s one-hit wonder. Bye. So I'm fine with it being there. Bye.
Number 16, Nina, 99 Luftballons.
I used to sing along to the German version when I was a kid. My mom rushed in one day, thought she was convinced I knew German. I didn't know what the hell I was saying. I was just mumbling of words.
That's the craziest thing you've ever said. I used to sing along with the German version?
Yeah, because that was what was originally played. Remember, that came out first.
So,
and then when it hit on the charts, then they had an English translation version. Okay?
Wow.
But no, it doesn't belong higher than Rob Bass or Rockwell, so sell.
Number 15, Devo, Whip It.
Now, listen, they got a greatest hits album. Are they a one-hit wonder, Devo? I mean, Whip It is a 80s classic, but I would argue that's not a one-hit wonder.
Okay, I don't.
So I'm going to sell.
I didn't realize they had a greatest hits album.
I thought that they did, but I know they've had more than one hit, so I'm going to sell on the grounds that's not a one-hit wonder.
Number 14, Big Country in a Big Country.
That's a one-hit wonder.
That's definitely a one-hit wonder. That's way too high. That's way too high.
But it belongs on the list. I'll buy.
Okay.
Yeah.
Number 13, Thomas Dolby, She Blinded Me with Science.
Well, to me, this has got to be like in the top 5. You guys know I adore this song.
Bye.
Okay. So is it too low though? Do I sell on the grounds it's too low?
Depends on how much you want to frustrate yourself.
All right, this is the new benchmark. It's got to be better than She Blinded Me with Science from henceforth. Okay.
Number 12, Animotion, Obsession.
Great song, not better than Thomas Dolby.
I'll buy. This is an outstanding song.
It's a great song, just not better than Thomas Dolby.
Number 11, Gary Newman, Cars.
Big time number 1 song, not better than Thomas Dolby. Sell.
Number 10, Frankie Goes to Hollywood, Relax.
One of the dirtiest songs of the era.
Right.
Now, they have a lot of hit. They were huge in the UK. They were not a one-hit wonder there. They kind of were here. So can we disqualify them on those grounds?
Frankie Goes to Hollywood doesn't strike me as a one-hit wonder.
Okay, then they're disqualified. Not technically a one-hit wonder.
Number 9, Kaja Gugu, Too Shy.
Oh, I've cited my Too Shy, Hush, Hush, Eye to Eye on more than one occasion. Okay, but not better than Thomas. Now, I see. This is actually a good list that just says Thomas Dolby too low. I'm going to go ahead and, retroactive buy on several of these other ones I sold. They belong on the list. I'm lobbying up, in honor of your disdain for MLB.
You're starting to make me uncomfortable.
I'm protesting the placement of Thomas Dolby. Okay.
All right, we got to go rapid fire here to finish out. Number 8, Bow Wow Wow, I Want Candy.
No. No.
Bye.
Number 7, Modern English, I'll Melt With You.
That could potentially be number 1.
Yes. Bye.
That's a freaking. Remember what movie that's from?
If you tell me, I will.
Valley Girl.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Yeah.
Bye.
Number 6, Tony Basil or Basil, Mickey.
That's a great song too. Definitely a buy. Yeah, it's Basil, by the way.
Basil. Number 5, Soft Cell, Tainted Love.
Oh man, now we're getting to some rarefied air right now.
Got to answer. Bye.
But I'd have been fine with like any of the order with these songs. This is an elite group of songs right here. Yeah.
Number 4, Tommy Two-Tone, 8675309.
Bye.
See, I have to buy. I was never a huge fan of this song, but I got to recognize the moment that it was, man. I mean, this was a big, big song, so I got to buy.
Number 3, Aha, Take On Me.
I mean, it's the all-time one of the all-time greatest music videos. Bye.
Number 2, Flock of Seagulls, I Ran.
I broke up with my first girlfriend in Orlando, Florida in the 3rd grade. Her name was Andrea. Because she liked this song and that dude's haircut.
I'm selling. That's too high.
It is way too high. Yeah.
Number 1, Dexy's Midnight Runners, Come On Eileen.
Maybe the greatest one-hit wonder ever. Not just in the 80s, ever. One of my all-time favorite songs. It's a freaking perfect pop song.
Courtesy of Entertainment Weekly.
That list was pretty. Once we
That's
got
the happiest you've ever been about a list.
I felt that was a little bit more populist, a little bit more everyman.
You tried to ruin it out of the gate.
They did. No, they tried to ruin it. No, they did. They did. I was correcting them. I was giving them some Jordan Peterson. They should have appreciated it. In fact, Daniel Horowitz will join us next. Trying to sell your home in any economic environment can be a challenge. One of the more stressful things you'll ever do, particularly if you did what I did last time. It's been 15 years and I still have nightmares about selling on one end and buying on the other. Thankfully, I found a real estate agent that I could trust. Now you need to find one as well, especially for these unprecedented times.
Bing.
Thank you. Where would you find such an agent? The good news is the name kind of says it all. Just go to the website, realestateagentsitrust.com. This is a company started by Glenn Beck and some of his associates. They also ran into real estate agents who were all hat and no cattle when the time came. And that is when they said, we can't allow that to happen to us ever again, but also our own audience. Thankfully, they found out, you know what? There's some good old-fashioned salt-of-the-earth agents right here in an audience of this size. So they started referring people to them around the country. And out of that grew this grassroots network of agents so that just about anywhere you want to go to buy or sell, we can hook you up probably with an agent that you can trust, one that will take charge of the situation but knows you're in charge and has a fully proven, verified track record of success. Go to the website, realestateagentsitrust.com. Again, that's realestateagentsitrust.com. Let's go again to our good friend Daniel Horowitz, our weekly prophet of woe and lamentation. Good to see you, my friend. How you be?
We are doing all right, Steve. Great to be back with you.
Good to have you back and over the weather. Good to see you again. They're healthy. So let us begin with what's happening with the vaccines. I don't want to, and the pause, the suspension of J&J. Today, Denmark. I don't know anybody in conservative media that has looked at more, or any media for that matter, that has looked at more COVID data in the last year than the two guys on the opposite ends of this conversation. And I don't know of a country that has been more honest, transparent, or thorough in its data than Denmark has. They have permanently banned the AstraZeneca vaccine here today. We've also got now Boris Johnson. You've got Trudeau in Canada. They're going with the Fauci messaging, which is it's okay if you get vaccinated, but you still can't have your lives back. All right. So just your overall view of the politics of this and what it means.
Sure. So, I mean, obviously, scientifically, we saw this coming a mile away. I mean, you were saying this last March, even when they were talking about we can't do anything, we have to lock down until there's a vaccine. And you were saying, well, there's a reason why we didn't have a vaccine for any other coronavirus. They're very elusive. It's hard to make them work. And the method they're using, according to their own admission, doesn't even stop you from getting it. It's not really a traditional vaccine that exposes you to a like a dormant part of the pathogen, and then you kind of have it. It takes over your immune system, and it elicits a reaction that we hope works. But in the past, and this is why the FDA didn't approve it and they abandoned it 14 years ago, it causes autoimmune dysfunction and dysregulation in some people. So this is not a surprise. This is par for the course. It was known that endovirus shells, which is what the J&J vaccine uses, they often could cause blood clotting issues. So it's not a matter of how many people truly got it. It's a matter of, we know scientifically it makes sense based on the method. But the truth be told, the other vaccines are pretty similar, except for that one point with the shell of how they use it. So the story is that the other vaccine makers have a little bit stronger political science behind them than J&J did, because they have more lobbyists that are hooked into the highest levels of government. I've always disagreed with my colleagues on this issue. Most people thought the cronyism of big pharma to get everyone vaccinated was the endpoint of COVID fascism, and I disagreed. I said COVID fascism was the endpoint of the fascism. They want the control. Now, there are people who want money to be made, and they will accommodate them, and it will be a part of it, and they'll use it as a tool to tyranny so long as it helps. Imagine if they would have said in March, there's no such thing as a vaccine that's going to work for this, so you're going to be locked down and wear masks forever. Well, no one would have done it. So they said, hey, let's do it until this 15 days to flatten the curve. Then they got people sucked in with the vaccine. Now that it has fulfilled its mission, as they say in the 1984 movie on Orwell, it's not about winning the war, it's about continuing the war. So now they have to continue the war. So it's going to be some sort of mix of getting the right vaccine every 6 months to keep the pockets lined enough. But ultimately, the main goal is to keep the tyranny, the fascism, and then any other policies such as jailbreak and spending and dependency that they get off of COVID to keep flowing. If you have a pleasurable experience in life, you're not going to stop milking that cow.
So then, if your analysis is correct of the situation, that this has just all been a stall tactic, right? That's essentially what you're saying, okay? To create the frog in the boiling water, and the more and more this goes on, the more and more we just adjust and get used to it, and and then we yell at Moses when that we have to get the straw for our own bricks when he tries to free us later, right? That's essentially your analysis. Am I summarizing that? Okay. So then what would be then an inflection point in your view?
Is there ever an inflection point with the frog in the boiling water? I mean, Steve, if there is ever any veracity to that analogy, I think we're seeing it proven now. It is shocking how far people have gone, but even now there is no mass uprising. I mean, we're not really seeing that. I think quietly, as time goes on, a larger percentage of people think this is bull, but it's not strong enough that they're willing to rebel. And I can't really blame Fauci and his fiendish ilk for doing what they're doing. If you look at how people are taking this almost for free, how much rope they're giving the government, I can't blame them for pushing their luck. The variants really scare people. It's a great tactic. It's always the unknown. And after 12 months, well, people are kind of used to the virus. Well, now there's a new one. And that one's really problematic. Boy, is that one going to get you more than ever. And I think they keep pressing that same panic button. And ultimately, Steve, the only way this ends is by neutralizing the fear. Okay, the fear is that spike protein of this psychosis. And this is why I've become such a big advocate for focusing and making awareness to the fact that there are so many effective early and prophylactic treatments that if you ever fear getting this, just stock your medicine cabinet with them and make sure you have a doctor to prescribe the stuff you need a prescription for, and you'll be fine. Unless that message goes out, people will continue fearing it, and they'll continue being susceptible to tyranny. And that is why the government has worked so hard to stifle any information on cheap and effective treatments.
Agree with you on that. But how much do you think your perspective on where this is at is permeated by where you live? For example, I live in a foreign country compared to where you live, literally. I mean, I can do almost anything in Iowa with a limited exception. I can't get to, there's no movie theater I could go to without wearing a mask, at least to get into the door. But the movie theaters have been open here since May. I mean,
Steve, I don't care about the movie theaters. How many children, what percentage of counties and children could go to school without wearing bondage?
Well, that's actually, see, I don't know. Now that I don't know the answer to, because my kid goes to Des Moines Christian and I wouldn't pay for him to wear one of those. I mean, That's a question for you, Todd. Are there any districts or counties that aren't making the kids wear masks anywhere in the country or anywhere in the state? I don't know the answer.
A few.
Well, Daniel knows more than I do. I haven't heard of any that uniformly are doing it.
There are a few.
And where I've heard, it's usually some rebel we should be applauding who's trying to plant a flag, and people are coming down hard on him.
Yeah.
Although they also have a lot of supporters in the community, so there's a mini civil war going. But I haven't.
I mean, because I can say this if I don't have a kid in the government schools.
Yeah.
Aside from that, though, I can basically live my entire life in Iowa right now without wearing a mask. And you
go to a doctor?
Yeah. Well, I'm going to exempt a medical clinic. I think you would too. Okay. Given it, I'm not going to get on a medical clinic, for example. But the school thing I hadn't thought about.
Steve, these are important things. I mean, we're not talking about a guy just, hey, I need a little physical, or I need this or something, or, I was going to get an eye appointment for, one of our sponsors here, so you wear the dumb thing while they're looking at you. I'm talking about people that are cancer patients, neurological problems,
sure.
Alzheimer's.
Now, what's going to happen is a bunch of people in my audience are going to say, yeah, see, Daniel's right, Stephen, you're wrong. But those exact same people are also going to comply and wear a mask everywhere they go at the exact same time. They're going to talk real tough on their keyboards in my email inbox, but then in their own lives, they're not going to really do a damn thing about it, most of them.
Yeah. I mean, Steve, what I'm trying to say is, I think we've all been sucked into that.
Yeah.
Like the frogs in boiling water.
The reason I'm asking is I think the lockdown argument is lost, actually. I think it's lost.
But they redefined lockdown.
Well, if I think it's moved to the masks, okay? That's why Gretchen Whitmer's out there saying, voluntarily would you not go to a restaurant? She knows. Her state last year lost more jobs and more businesses than any state in the union did a year ago. She's got to run for re-election next year. She knows that, okay? So the word lockdown is tainted. It's like alt-right or what Reagan did to liberal in the 80s, all right? That's why we were so struck to see Boris Johnson just roll it out as a cause celeb yesterday, because the word itself has been tainted. They come up with different ways to communicate the same thing because the branding's bad. Now, where I would agree with you is I think the lockdown, the mask battle is is the new iteration of the lockdown battle. It's the same, and I think that's what you think, which is why you pivoted right to where do you have to wear a mask in a school or things of that nature. I think the mask is the battle, actually, not so much the lockdown.
Yeah, no, that is the battle of the time. And my point is that we don't even realize we can't even live in the dystopian America that we thought was beyond the pale, 13, 14 months ago. So that is my point, that yes, the red states are better, and I think Iowa is particularly better, but not that much better. And, it's shocking when you see 80-20 Trump counties that still have this problem in the school systems. So I think a lot of it is people aren't willing to fight. They're not willing to power through the shame.
So the country's basically gone. Is that what we're really saying? Is that the country's gone?
The country is absolutely
this was
gone.
founded as a country on Judeo-Christian values and principles with a limited government, and it is now a country of pagan values with limited freedom. That's really what we're saying.
Enforced with stronger enforcement mechanisms than the Catholic Church enforced their control in the Middle Ages in Europe. I mean, this is what it is, Steve.
Now we have opportunities, though. If we're going to have, here's where the opportunity is. If there's this many people that are this compliant and complacent, then you have the old Samuel Adams committed minority, right? That you can outwork the complacent and the compliant. You can outwork them. That's what you're trying to do, right? With your constitutional task force. Tell us about that again.
Sure. So ConAction.network is the Constitution Action Network. My idea is, like in Iowa, you have Republican governor, House, Senate. So I don't want to hear excuses of, well, Biden's president. You could do whatever you want on 90% of the issues. That's the reality we're seeing. But we're not. We're not doing what we want. It's just slightly less crazy than in blue states. So my idea is to get everyone involved in state legislatures. Start monitoring this stuff. Start calling your state legislators. Start meeting with them. Mm-hmm. They don't hear from us. The lesson we've seen from Asa Hutchinson and Kristi Noem with the transgender fight, it's true of COVID fascism, it's true of all these issues, is even in the reddest states, they hear early and often from the Chamber of Commerce and similar interests, the Rainbow Jihad. They don't hear from even the majority. Forget about an irate minority. They don't hear from the majority, clear majority of voters in their area. That's where we need to focus. Like you said, Steve, the country's lost. It's gone. The question is, how many states could we reconstitute under some modicum of normalcy and possibly even republicanism? And one more time, where can people go to get more information or to enlist in that effort? ConAction.network. Tell us your state and zip code. We'll pair you with a team in your area. Good to see you, brother. Take care, all right? God bless. Take care. You bet. You too. Gentlemen, thoughts on that conversation before we get out of here?
That was really fascinating to see you guys try to compare notes and you just making it overt. Obviously, so we're not talking past each other. You know, your baseline is Maryland, your baseline is Iowa, and so we have a little bit more inherent optimism, but you both were speaking truth. I mean, this is what I try to say. When we return to normal, we won't be normal, and people need to understand that whatever that return to normal is still, we're going downhill. We're going to the bottom of that slippery slope. We're not healing. We're not healing. That's well said, Aaron.
Yeah, I don't know how to follow that up, other than to say, the frog in the boiling kettle pot, whatever you want to call it, that phenomenon is absolutely true. And I go back to one of our buy, sell, hold submissions. The notion that we are literally surrounded by people who are afraid of not being afraid. How do you reason with that? You can't, because it's a spiritual darkness. I posted a video on my Twitter account last week. Now, I see them still many times, people driving in their cars by themselves with a mask on. But I saw it on my way into the office this morning. But this time, Steve, did you see this video I posted? I pulled up to a traffic light. There was a dude in his car beside me on my left, and there was a dude in his car beside me on my right, both of them wearing masks. Yet, just a couple of days ago, you forwarded this email to me of this little 6-year-old girl at a school district here in the greater Des Moines metro area, who stood up for herself. She's 6 years old. She's been stigmatized by her school for not wearing a mask at playground, at recess. Stigmatized. She stood up for herself. When you have that dichotomy playing out in even a community in Iowa, what does that say about the rest of the country? Yeah, that's a good point. We're going to stick around. Interesting polling results. We'll discuss them in the overtime. For the rest of you, we'll see you tomorrow, noon to 2 Eastern, right after Glenn Beck. Until then, John 3:17.